Hello, and welcome to Insights, the podcast from Understanding Society. Understanding Society is a longitudinal survey that captures life in the UK in the 21st century. Every year, we ask each member of thousands of the same households across the UK about different aspects of their life. Each episode of Insights explores how our data gets used, what does it show us, and what can we learn from it. I'm Chris Coates, your usual host, and for this episode I'm handing over to my colleague Louise Miles, who's been talking to Neil, one of our participants in Understanding Society. He talked about what taking part in the study involves, and what it feels like to be part of the UK's largest household panel survey.
Thank you for joining us, Neil. My first question is, how long have you been taking part?
Since the original British Household Panel Survey in 1991.
Oh, wow. So that's over 30 years of data. What made you join?
Well, I think I just finished university at the age of 25, and just the whole sort of science and collection of data and the importance of collecting this information for being able to make decisions and understand what was going on in the country. At that time, 1991, we still had Margaret Thatcher in power. We'd gone, as we did for a few more years, we'd gone through all sorts of upheavals with communities, and understanding what was going on for me was really important, and how they were changing.
Oh, okay. And what does it feel like to take part in the UK's largest household panel survey?
Well, it's interesting because you answer the same questions every year. So it's also like looking back, every time I answer the questions, it's like looking back in your diary of, well, how's the last 12 months gone? And those questions about how are you mentally, how are you physically, how are you getting on kind of financially, which we've gone from my first job, which I don't mind saying, in 1991, I was earning £15,000 a year, my first ever salary, which seemed like a lot until interest rates hit 17%. And, moving through all that time, and then having, me and my wife having a family, every year we look back on what's gone on, and it's like a window into our last year. And oftentimes you don't get that time to reflect on all the things that have happened. You're just dealing with all the day-to-day crisis, be it COVID or children not being very well or whatever it might be. So it's a really interesting snapshot of each year. Of course, technology has changed a great deal since the original kind of big clunky laptops and no mobile phones and all that kind of stuff, to now everything being done on the online, on the World Wide Web, or whatever you want to call it. When we first started, none of that was available. Nobody had a PC at home, and it was involving an awful lot of helpers coming round and interviewing people generally in the evenings, and it would take all evening.
What do you particularly enjoy about the study?
For me as a scientist, it's interesting to see how the survey varies beyond the core data of the issues of the day, be it, kind of memory or obesity or health, etc., and how things have been strapped on to be able to use this brilliant cohort to find out stuff that's really, really valuable, which if you started again, you wouldn't have the demographics and all that kind of stuff of that group, which you have to be able to build on. So, I can look at my 33 years, how my health's changed, how my weight's changed, how for myself and my wife, and how other things have developed and in that time. So it's just really interesting to then see what's coming out, and the fact that you are hopefully influencing national and international policy by the information that you're providing.
And do any other family members take part?
Oh yeah, my wife is super keen. She does when the emails come in, she sits down for 3 or 4 hours and works out all the income that the household's making and all that kind of stuff. And actually, to be fair to her, she normally does the first survey, which has to put in all that household income and your bills and all those things, which I'm never very good at. And I always used to sit there with a pile of paper when we originally did it. But thankfully now she keeps all that on a nice spreadsheet. So we all get to type it in after she's done the first one. So, it used to be well, it would take a whole evening to do me, and then they'd have to come back and do my wife another evening. And then when the boys started, when they were young, it was almost like a third evening. So some of this stuff could take kind of, we'd see the same person every year, which was also nice in terms of their life in reviewing things for 3 or 4 evenings in a kind of month. And then, we'd see him again in 12 months later. So it was like meeting an old friend.
Do you ever talk to friends about it?
No, and that's the other thing that's interesting, kind of thinking back on it. I couldn't tell you, and obviously it's an anonymous survey and all that kind of stuff. And I know from when we used to have the interviewers come round, she would be seeing sort of one person in the local town 2 or 3 miles away. But I couldn't tell you if anybody in my village or local community had done the survey. And quite right, because it's anonymous and all that kind of stuff. But it sort of never comes up, which is a shame, really. But it will do this Friday when we all get in our local community pub, and I'll bring it up then.
Do you think the UK has changed much since you've joined?
Yeah, I think for me there are things, over 33 years. I can't stop saying that, makes me sound really old. Over the time I've been doing it, there are things which have changed in the world and that have become bigger issues. Mental health is certainly one of those issues, they'll ask me every year, do I feel, more or less kind of happy and all that kind of stuff. And I think as I've seen technology developing and as I've seen my own children grow up, that whole issue of mental health and mental stress has become more and more important. And I'm glad that those questions were always in there because you'll be able to see that difference over time.
What do you think's been the biggest change since you've joined?
I think it is the whole importance of mental health, and also, as part of what I do, I help a couple of charities who help people with cancer, and just the improvement in life expectancy and things with cancer now, and people who are surviving a lot longer afterwards. So, you know, in the 80s and 90s, I would have seen people kind of dropping off the survey, I guess, if I could have seen the numbers very quickly. Whereas now, people are lasting a lot longer, etc., etc., and therefore that cohort goes on, and you get the more generations and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a life expectancy, and also just the whole changes in politics, having lived through Thatcher and the kind of the 80s, and now seeing some of the things that less well-off people are having to deal with. Just as I said, I do a lot of stuff for charity, trying to support those people who are in more difficult. Having seen that whole big cycle over kind of 30 years, really, and us getting back to almost how it was for a lot of, I moved from the southwest up into the northeast, who suffered massively through the kind of Thatcher realignment of society, and it's interesting now seeing how things are going, and how we can help people differently, and the ability to do things online and all that kind of stuff.
Are there any areas of life that we don't ask about in the study that you think we should cover?
I think, the key things that you do ask, so you ask about health, you ask about mental health, you ask about how much you spend on food and all that kind of stuff. I think one of the things for me which would be interesting is that understanding of what healthy eating is, and how that understanding has changed over time. So, we talk about 5 a day and all those kind of things. And, whilst the 5 a day is an arbitrary figure, it's a reflection of healthy eating and less ultra processed food. So I think as we understand more about ultra processed food and sugar and all those kind of things, I think that would be really important. And I also think you have a great opportunity to lead, or to push back against, let me put it that way, big business in terms of their statements around ultra processed food or whatever it might be, and them not being, we couldn't change that because of, in the same way as we had a lot of debate about not being able to get rid of sugar in drinks because it was going to cause all sorts of problems, etc., etc. And then when we finally did it after 10 years, strangely, all it did was make people a bit healthier and there was no problems with the market. So I think because of the data you've got, there's an opportunity for you to lead some of these big debates, which really are going to be key in terms of B2C and diabetes and cost of money we spend on the health service, etc., moving forward. Be that with the mental health issue and what's causing mental health problems, but also with the food we eat and can governments make changes that actually will be valued and not make people's life worse and actually improve it.
And do you think that taking part in the study has had an impact on your own life?
Yes, I think partly, a few years back we did some tests with memory and all those things, and we try and do all the add-ons that you do as well, which is lovely. I think part of the eating habits and the thinking about how we do our life is important, and also that one question which really sticks in my mind is, are you feeling more or less stressed than last year? Are you happy? Are you not happy, etc.? And actually, because I think the question starts, all in all, are you? And that bit of when you're dealing with day-to-day stuff in terms of some of the stressful jobs and situations I've had and all those kind of things, actually, when you've gone through all of that and you've thought about your family and all that kind of stuff, the answer is, I think for almost 30 years I've said, yes, I'm as happy as I was last year. And that's really having thought about stuff and thought, well, yeah, it's been hard with this and hard with that, but I've got this lovely family, we're all well and healthy, etc., etc. So it does affect, and that's part of that idea of looking back in your diary. It does affect how you review the last year, however hard it might have been, as it were. It is interesting, as you say, thinking back over all that time, because it's more than half my life.
Do you think everyone in the family enjoys taking part?
Yeah, so they all take part, they all fill it in, and I think they all feel part of it too. And having been brought up through the changes that happened during that period, certainly in the Northeast with, mass unemployment and all that kind of stuff, how things have changed with kind of like, Blair and the boom and all that kind of stuff over that time has been absolutely massive, really.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you to all our participants who share their time and data with us and make the whole study possible. You can find out more about how the data from Understanding Society is changing practice and informing policy by visiting our website, understandingsociety.ac.uk. And you can follow us on social media. Thank you for listening, and remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.